All right, we're back here. We're going to do some Ohio State talk here, a little college football, a lot of college football, actually, but we're going to get right into the Ohio State Buckeyes. Going to bring Greg back here. Again, election night here in Ohio and around the country, Tuesday, November 4th. Sorry, late night here, 10:45 we're getting started, but why not? It's always fun to talk to Buckeyes, especially this season. It's been a great one. So let's get right into it with our little game breakdown here. So Ohio State gets it done 38-14, moves to 8-0 in the season. Number one college football ranking show just came out. So we're going to go over that and talk about that in a little bit. But you know, no real drama here. Ohio State is number one in the first CFP football rankings. But, you know, a couple news and notes from this game. Last meeting, this will be the last meeting versus Penn State and for the next 2 years. So they will not play in the 26 or 27 season unless they meet in the Big Ten title game. They've met every year since 1993. And obviously the conference realignment, kind of the super conferences, have done that. Ohio State extends the country's longest win streak to 12 games. They're now 5-0 against Penn State as the number one team in the country, 1998, 2006, 7, 2015, and then now 2025. Julian Sayin leads the nation in completion percentage. We're going to talk plenty about him. He's at 80.7 completion percentage, and he just had his fifth 300-yard plus game of the season. Kenyatta Jackson had his first multi-sack game of his career. Jeremiah Smith surpassed the 2,000-yard receiving for his career. He's now, it says 14th. He's actually 12th all time. I'll show you those numbers here in a minute. And the defense held Penn State to 55 rush yards, 80 yards under the previous low, which was 135 earlier in the season. So, Greg, you know, you saw some of those numbers. You watched the game. You were there in the shoe. Tell me what you thought about the Buckeyes' performance over Penn State.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack. You know, first of all, as much as one-sided as the series has been, it will be kind of sad not playing Penn State in all seriousness the next 2 years. It is I look at it, and I think a lot of Buckeye Nation looks at it as a rival. It's definitely a good rivalry game. I love the game. So we will miss playing them. I say that without any bit of sarcasm. I know it's been the games are never easy, and this one wasn't easy despite the final score. I mean, it was a little shaky in the first half. So what Julian's saying in this passing offense continues to do is just, you know, beyond words right now. It's the way this offense is able to click in every possible way, especially on the deep ball, you know, with Tate and Smith and the supporting cast is just truly incredible. And Sayin sitting over an 80% completion percentage is just astounding at this point. And being able to watch that live too, just being able to watch those deep throws live where you can actually see the whole picture, see the wide receiver separation, see zero break in the stride, see where he's putting those balls out there, you know, and how the receivers are running under him. It's truly, I think I called it art in a group text message. It really was. It was like watching a ballet, honestly. So it was awesome. Crazy we only gave up 55 rushing yards. It actually really felt like, and I do think Penn State came out with a really good game plan and did a lot of things that, you know, other teams may try to mimic as we get through the rest of the year. And I think they, you know, unbalanced lines, you know, the quick toss sweeps into an unbalanced line, quick passes on the outside, quick screens. You know, they were able to make some positive plays, and they had one good touchdown drive, and then they had a very short touchdown drive on a fumble that probably should have been blown dead for you know, progress. But, you know, and then that was it. The second half was just pure dominance. And I think in a way, although, you know, sitting in that stadium at halftime, 17-14, it was scary. Kind of brought back, are we gonna tighten up? Are we going to, do what we do in the Michigan games the past few years and get really conservative? And then we came right out through the ball in the second half and left no doubt. So I do think it was a good test for us to go into kind of halftime in that situation where we got a bad break. And, we're in a situation where we were in a bit of a dogfight.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a very good positive. And hopefully we can continue, and hopefully we can take in November 29th to where, like, hey, if our backs are ever against the wall at any point in that game or the things aren't going our way, go with what got you there, throw the football, trust your passing game, trust your quarterback, stay aggressive. If we could just continue to just like that be our mantra the rest of the way, I think we'll be fine. But I actually will give props to Penn State. They came out with a good game plan. They played well.
Yep.
Ethan Gruckenmeyer, the Columbus kid, played, I thought, pretty decent football, but all that to say, we won by 24 and dominated the second half, and they really could do nothing offensively, and they could do nothing defensively to stop us. So Jim Knowles got his whooping, and it was a fun day in the shoe and a beautiful day.
Yeah. And it says something about Grunkemeyer too, that Penn State got whooped, but he looked like one of the better quarterbacks we played all year. That includes Arch Manning. So, but yeah, like just this defense continues to get it done. This offense, I think that was the first touchdown the defense gave up in the first half this season, which is unbelievable. There's usually a fluke one in there somewhere. But yeah, just crazy stuff. I had someone on social media this week tell me stats are for losers. And so I guess I'm a loser because I'm going to show you some stats. So here are some very, very, eye-popping stats that, continue to show this team's dominance. They are on offense, they're the number 30 team. Now, that includes all 136 FBS teams. So 30 out of 136, pretty damn good. 437.5 yards per game. They're 17th best scoring offense, 36.5 points a game. But when you put that up with what they're giving up, they're basically outscoring their opponents by 30 points a game right now. They're giving up 30, or they're scoring 36.5. They're giving up less than 7, which is first in the country. Their passing yards allowed per game is third best in the country, 133 passing yards per game. And teams are usually behind and they have to throw. So that shows you how good not just the secondary is, but the linebackers, the defensive line. So like they're all working in unison, and that's shout out to Matt Patricia, because what he's doing this year for this team. I know it's probably been said on every Ohio State podcast, but I don't think it can be said enough how good of a job he's doing. But Ohio State, their only area of weakness, maybe you could say, is rushing the ball right now, and they're still putting up 153 yards per game on the rush end. They brought that up a little bit. Penn State's not a great rush defense, but again, you are playing against who's in front of you. Ohio State did a pretty good job overall. And when you can throw it, like, why would you ever go away from something that is an absolute strength? I know you gotta, play a little bit of balance and this and that, but Ohio State just continues to dominate on both sides of the ball. And if you look at these next 3 games, Purdue, UCLA, Rutgers, this is kind of like the warm up to, the game at the end of the season. And Michigan, I do not want to, ever downgrade them as an opponent, but because last year they were probably about as low as they can be. And, they came into our house and snuck out with a victory. So we will never take that team for granted. However, you got to use these next 3 games as a really good tune-up to get whatever kinks you got worked out for that team. And that'll be an emotional game. It's going to be hopefully, I've heard Dave Biddle on with Bucknuts. He's on 97.1 down there in Columbus too. He said you got to plan for that game to be a brutal weather day,
Yeah.
snow, wind, whatever. And, so get your stuff ready because you're going to want to pass the ball, but you got to be prepared for anything, any elements that can come at you that day.
Yep. Yeah, and those offensive numbers, and we've talked about it all year, and it continues to get play about how efficient we are as far as how few plays we run and how we're, slowing the game down effectively for various reasons, one of which may be to kind of keep us fresh for the stretch run. But just looking at those numbers, like it doesn't necessarily factor in how efficient we've been as well.
Exactly.
And it's a really good point. Like you have, 3 weeks to kind of, again, we've said it all year. We don't take any of these games for granted because we've been around long enough. Going to Purdue, it reminds me of there was a game, what was it, 6-7 years ago that went horribly up in Purdue, and they were a bit of a better team, but you can't take any games for granted. But these next 3 weeks are, like you said, an opportunity to work out the kinks, get right, and also like put as much on film as we can put on film.
Mm-hmm.
Because I used to think this way, like sometimes you run trick plays or you do different things or you show different looks, and sometimes and it might be against Purdue or it might be against Rutgers, and the general the reaction of a fan might be, why would you run that play against Rutgers? And it's like, well, guess what? Running that play puts that play on film, forces your future opponents to see that play, prepare for that play. So the more shit you can just put out there, the more things, it's just going to be that much more time that a team like Michigan or Indiana or anybody that we might play in the playoff is going to have to watch those plays, prep for them. And by the way, we may have other plays cooked up that are coming. So put as much on film, put as much doubt out there, show as many different things as you can show. To just get really effectively get in the heads of your better opponents later in the year. But we are clicking as well as we can be right now. I'm just excited for the rest of this month, as this whole season's been exciting, and we know where this team's focus is. This team's focus has not wavered for a second in any of these games, so there's no reason to expect it will happen in the coming weeks here.
Absolutely. I'm glad you did bring up that efficiency point, because I heard someone saying leading into the Penn State game that Ohio State, basically by the number of plays they have run, has effectively played one fewer game than the rest of its opponents this season. Because,
which is so amazing, because it's like watching the games, it doesn't feel like we're slowing the games down. But
yeah, I felt like against Wisconsin, against Penn State, they kind of were hustling a little bit more early in the game, and then they slowed it down a little bit later. And again, maybe that's to show a different look. Maybe that's to get up and catch the defense sleeping, or maybe they can't get the play call in time or something, which Jim Knowles apparently was notorious for doing with Ohio State. So. All right, let's take a look at Julian Sayin here, and we know what he is right now. But like against Penn State, 20 of 23, 316 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. That is good for 87% completion. I mean, you go in the backyard and throw the ball with your, just some friends. The ball's probably going to hit the ground 1 out of 10 times, if you're throwing it around 20, 30 yards. And that's not with 300-pound linemen or linebackers blitzing you and guys covering. Although like some of our friends that we might be throwing the football around are not quite Jeremiah Smith or Carnell Tate as well.
The thing about this is not a dink and dunk offense.
No.
This is not like, the old Texas Tech teams or things like that, where they're throwing passes at the line of scrimmage and their quarterbacks are going 48 for 56, Yeah. These are downfield throws, which just, again, astounding, incredible, ridiculous. You name the adjective. It's absurd. It is like football. It is, throwing the football and just executing a passing game at the highest possible level. You're talking about at Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, LSU type levels at this point. Yeah. And it just still feels raw, and it still feels like there's more improvement to be made. And it's Sayin is just starting to scratch the surface of what he is capable of, but his ability to sling the football around this field looks a lot like CJ Stroud. And I didn't know if we'd really ever see anybody like CJ Stroud again in a Buckeye uniform. And it's like we're seeing it in a different form right now.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what impressed me, obviously, some of his moon balls to Tate and to Smith were fantastic. But the play that I thought was his play of the game was that 3rd and 5. He got out of 2 guys potentially sacking him and ran for about 8 to 10 yards and got a first down. And then, you go down and score a touchdown on that drive. So he is showing some elusiveness, and he is so good in the pocket, and he does not seem to get rattled. He took a big shot in this game. There was a roughing the passer on it, and just gets right up and goes down. So he's a tough kid. He doesn't look like he'd be the toughest kid, but he is a tough kid, and he can rip that football. So
and that's a really good point, because as these tougher games, as we play better defenses and we get more into the playoff time of the year, he's going to have to make more plays with his legs. So the ability to kind of seeing that, we knew he had the ability, but we really hadn't had to see it all year. That's a great point. That was I think there's going to be more of that as the season goes.
Well, let's talk about some of his teammates throwing the ball to. Jeremiah Smith in this game, 6 catches, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns, 20.5 yards per reception. And the second touchdown was just like an absolute, there's probably, 10 people in the world that can then make that catch. A football is hard enough to catch when it's coming at you, as a perfect spiral, you get your hands out and whatever. But, when the ball, you've seen it on onside kicks and stuff, how hard it is, how difficult it is to make that catch or to recover the ball. But that ball was coming down, basically vertically from the way it should have been. And he just reaches out, one hands it, and walks in the end zone. So
yeah, that's like a 65% of the time that gets intercepted, probably 33% of the time it's incomplete.
Yep.
And 2% it's caught. And
yep.
There were a lot of wagering enthusiasts that were sweating that ball out in the air.
Yes.
So he not only snagged a touchdown, but he also snagged a cover in the process.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you knew the line, it was, some people, I saw it as high as 20.5 and as low as 17.5. At halftime, the live line was 11.5. So, I think me and some others included jumped on that. But
you had a few.
I might have had just about every number in the teens, including 11.5. It was a good day, and once again, I think Ohio State is 7-1 against the spread this year, or 8-0 depending on the number you got it. If you got it at 27.5 versus the Bobcats, then they covered. If you got it at 28.5, like me, way back in week 3, then they're 7-1. But Ohio State's been a very good team to bet on this season if you're the gambling type. We'll talk about his Jeremiah Smith's running mate here, Carnell Tate, who I heard someone, I can't remember who, but someone compared him to T. Higgins. And I think that's maybe the most perfect comparison I can think of. But he just has he's a big wide receiver. He's tall. He's great body control. His hands are phenomenal. And he just goes and gets it. If it's a contested catch, he's coming down with it way more than 50% of the time. In this game, 5 catches, 124, a touchdown, and 24.8 yards per catch, which is he's been our big play threat this year, which Jeremiah Smith, again, leads in catches, leads in yards, and leads in touchdowns. But like Carnell Tate, yards per catch is through the roof this year. I think it's like 21 yards per catch. So,
I believe even I think it was a pass. I think he had I think one of those receptions was for -1 yards too.
It was. You are correct. You are correct.
Just insane. Insane yards per catch for Tate.
We're going to bring it back just one more time to his teammate here. 55 catches on the season, 725, 8 receiving touchdowns, 9 total. So for his career, 131 catches, 74 away from the record to tie. 2,000, he surpasses the 2,000-yard club. So 858 to tie, which is he's a sophomore. He's got a full year after this, plus 4 regular season games, plus the playoffs. So he's got a lot more stats ahead of him. And so is the career receiving yardage all time. He is now up to 12th in Ohio State history, right behind Garrett Wilson. But he surpassed Ted Ginn, DeVere Posey, Kenyon Rambo, Dane Sensenbacher, Tengid Jr. He surpassed all those guys. And his teammate, Carnell Tate, is now 22nd all time for the Buckeyes. But you can see, he's just climbing up these ladders of all these stats. And again, stats are for losers, I heard this week. But you know what? Stats are also put up by really impressive players on really impressive teams. So, I know stats aren't the end all be all, but generally talented guys are going to put up some big numbers, and this guy's doing it. So I guess when you watch this guy, where, we've seen Marvin Harrison Jr., we've seen JSN, we've seen Ibuka, we have seen Garrett Wilson, we've seen Chris Olave, we've seen all these guys. Where does he fall for you right now as it stands?
Right now, I don't. He's right near the top, if not the top. I think he's just different, and maybe it's just you hear it from so many different people, but you also just kind of see it with your eyes as well. And every one of those guys is great. Marv was incredible. Marv was pure dominance. JSN was amazing, and you name it, all the way back to David Boston. But this guy is it's just different. From day one, he has been a man among boys, a man among men, you name it. And he's just so young. He's just so freaking young that it's almost, there's a LeBron quality to it about just this guy is, still one of the younger guys on the football field at any given point in time. And he just passes every test. When you look at him physically, when you watch him run, when you watch him catch, when you watch him run routes, it's just how do you, I think the lasting image of I think, at least this past game, and maybe even this season for Smith, is that deep ball that Sayin threw to him, where he had 2 guys on him, but he just ran past those 2 guys, and they were kind of right on him, but he got a step, and it was almost it didn't matter. Saying, okay, there's 2 guys on him, it doesn't matter because we know he's going to beat both of them.
Yep.
And it's just those 2 guys kind of almost on each hip behind him while he is 1 stride ahead, and the throw is made perfectly. It just kind of encapsulates everything that he's all about and everything that this passing game's all about right now. And it's just,
and he doesn't seem to be a selfish guy. He seems to be a good teammate. Doesn't complain that, like some guys that are the number one might be hey, but this team, I think, is very focused, as you said initially to start. They're all about just winning, getting the job done, and moving on. So we're going to go back to one more stat here because, I'm a stat guy. I like it. But I saw this on the Fox broadcast and, I just figured I had to share it. So highest completion through the first 8 games to start a season. Now this is through in the CFP era. So since 2014, Julian Sayin's right at the top. And look at those other guys, all first round picks right behind him. Julian Sayin 80.7% this year. Joe Burrow 78.8 back in the national championship year of 2019. Bo Nix 78.3 in 2023, and JJ McCarthy that same year 78.1. I didn't realize both of those guys, the Bo or JJ, were that high, and you can see what these guys are doing in the NFL too. And Julian Sayin is arguably better, at least like what the statistics say for completion percentage. He's better right now, but you're talking about a former number 1 overall pick. I think Bo Nix was like number 12 or 13, and JJ McCarthy was like top 10 as well. So, you're talking about 3 guys that went in the top 10 of the draft, including one guy number 1 overall. And this guy's right there with them.
And I bet if you looked at like the average air yards per throw, that Sayin, I mean, I know Burrow slinged it down the field a lot, but Sayin would have to be at the top or really close to Burrow in that regard too. Like I said, just the fact that these are not, we mix in some slants, some outs, some dump offs to the running backs and some tight end throws, but there are a lot of those throws that are going 15, 20, 30, and sometimes 40 or 50 yards down the field. And to complete at that clip, but there's a reason why it hasn't been done before. So, you're really kind of seeing something that's very rare.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think Ohio State this year especially has been using the pass game as an extension of the run game too. So some of those throws that might not be vertically a lot of air yards, he's still throwing the ball pretty far, far hash or whatever to get, Tate or Innis or Smith, like maybe a 6-yard gain. That's basically, like we said, an extension of the run game there. So
it's almost like it's almost like the fact that he's played himself into what I believe is he now the leading Heisman candidate, like from a betting standpoint, like to be able to to know that at any point in time he's not the best player on the field in our offense, and yet he is still played it, because I think we had talked about it at the beginning of the year, whether it was on the show or amongst ourselves, where it was like, man, Sayin, it's hard to figure out a scenario where like Sayin could win the Heisman, because if Sayin's going to win the Heisman, or if Sayin's up there for the Heisman, then that probably means Jeremiah Smith has like 2,000 yards receiving, and he would probably win the Heisman. But guess what? We have found a scenario where Julian Sayin could win the Heisman with what he has been able to do from a completion percentage standpoint, and just the kind of splitting of the main targets between Tate and Smith and everybody else. So it's just, to be where he's at, on a personal level from a Heisman standpoint is just really also just a testament to how out of this world he's been. And is somebody that we didn't even really have, first game of the year, he didn't throw a whole lot. And, and there have been games this year where we hadn't unleashed him. And now I believe we've used that analogy of like, the Ferrari, and his first, it was like, all right, you could just drive around the neighborhood. He's on the fucking Autobahn now every week and just opening it up to whatever. And, window, top down, windows down. It's got a good looking woman next to him, and he's just cruising about 200 down the road, and nobody's saying a word.
Nope, not at all. Looking at the FanDuel odds here, Julian Sayin is plus 180 right now, the favorite. Fernando Mendoza, Indiana, plus 220. Ty Simpson, Alabama, 350. Marcel Reed, Texas A&M, 650. Gunnar Stockton, 2,500. And then Jeremiah Smith, plus 4,000. So, overall, right now it's Julian Sayin's to win. And that's pretty awesome considering, we had a quarterback competition and, until late mid-August at least. So, very, 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 happy, as I'm sure Ryan Day and the rest of, the coaching staff is with, what Sayin is doing. And I mean, what a great name too for, to play on words with that last name too. So I'm sure, Ohio State, I know they launched Heisman campaigns for both Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sayin. So we'll see about that. So they're having a good time. Speaking of somebody that's not having a good time, Jim Knowles, he's let's put things into perspective. This guy's being paid well, but he is not enjoying his football life right now. He's on a 3-5 football team that the defense got absolutely. I saw Ohio State averaged 8.7 yards per play in this game, and I don't believe a Jim Knowles defense has given up that much. A Penn State defense hasn't given up that much in, I believe it was over a decade in yardage per game or per play. So, hats off to Jim Knowles. So
in Penn State, when you flash it up a while back, Penn State 0-5 in the Big Ten. I'm just saying it out loud because it's beyond mind-boggling. The number two preseason ranked team. I believe probably the media consensus too. There were many so-called experts before the season that called Penn State coming into the Horseshoe and winning that game, winning the Big Ten. 0-5 in the Big Ten. Life comes at you fast. What a crazy ass year in college football. That's what makes sports beautiful. It's so damn unpredictable. But it's like, people say, what would the odds be on that at the beginning of the year? They couldn't even exist because it's like it's 1 in 100,000, 50,000.
Right.
Insane.
Yeah. It's
they play Indiana next, so it's not getting any easier for them, and possibly looking at not even playing in a bowl.
I think that could be I think that game this weekend might be an interesting one. I think it's a 4.5-point spread, but it's I wouldn't put Penn State quite out to pasture yet, but
I wouldn't.
Yeah, but it's we'll see what might happen here. So let's move on a little bit first. So the playoff rankings came out, and first of all, the schedule came out, which is I actually love the schedule. How they play one Friday night game, and then like Saturday, the December 20th is going to be like just a awesome day of college football. You get the 3 playoff games at noon, at 3:30 and 7:30 last year. That's when Ohio State played Tennessee in the 7:30 slot. And then the quarterfinals, Cotton Bowl, Orange Bowl, Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, and then the semifinals, and then the championship game, which is in Miami this year. And it looks like this is one of those years where it was like, could Miami make it to the national championship and play in their home stadium, kind of like what Tampa did in the Super Bowl, like Tom Brady's year with them. Doesn't look like that now. We'll talk about that, but yeah. So
I love how it's like it's always great when it lines up where you can get the New Year's Day, actual New Year's Day games too, which is perfect.
Yes, yeah, those two.
That's a beautiful setup right there.
And I actually like even the semifinals Thursday and Friday, playing them 2 separate, like that's great. It's like you get all the focus on one game. I think that's a pretty good setup for
and I think that would also be should be wild card weekend for NFL too,
it
right?
Would be.
So you have semifinal Thursday, semifinal Friday, and then you have 6 wild card games.
Yep.
Between Saturday and Monday.
Yep. The only thing I wish they would switch, and they must have something on the numbers, but I wish they would play that national championship game on Saturday night. Or I know you don't want to go against the NFL. I'm sure there's some contracts stuff there, but like they must have it in the cards that Monday works out for them. But regardless, let's hope we're all playing that Monday, January 19th. So CFP rankings come out. Buckeyes 1, Indiana 2, Texas A&M 3, Alabama 4th. So those would be the teams that get buys as of now. I apologize, I don't have the graphic up ready. But the 5-12 game right now would be Georgia and Memphis, the group of 5 school. The 8-9 game would be Texas Tech hosting Oregon, which is kind of a cool matchup. Ole Miss would be hosting Virginia, and BYU would be hosting Notre Dame. That is a interesting clash right there. Yes. So Virginia would be the rep from the ACC, even though they are not in the top 12. So that's why some of these teams like Memphis isn't in the top 12. Virginia, I don't believe, is in the top 12. So that's why these schools get slotted slightly ahead.
Yeah, because I saw Texas, I think, is the first team out right now.
Yes, I think Texas, Oklahoma are the first two. And this year it's different where you do not have to be a conference champion to be in the top 4, which is good for the loser of what could be number 1 versus number 2, Indiana and Ohio State. So, that you do not have to be a national championship team, or I'm sorry, a conference winner to make the top 4 of the national championship playoff bracket there. All right, let's take a look back at last week. We already talked about the Buckeyes. We talked about Miami. Well, we didn't talk about Miami's game, but like they go into SMU. I believe that's outside of Dallas, and they get run out of town 26-20, and probably the biggest game in SMU's last 40-year history. The Hoosiers, they get by, and that kind of got off to a slow start, but blew out Maryland, Georgia, and Florida. And I had to put my little that was my other little gaming point. I might have had Georgia 6.5 in that game, and took a knee at the 1 yard line, but good. It's a good win by them. Texas was up by like 30 points in this game, or 28 points or something, and Vandy got it down to where they nearly recovered an onside kick to complete the comeback. Oklahoma pretty much ends Tennessee's chance to get into the playoffs. Utah just destroyed Cincinnati. So those were some of the games of note this past weekend. What stood out for you?
And I would say also add North Carolina State knocking off
yes.
Georgia Tech.
That's a big
from undefeated. So, yeah, you're starting to get into that. It's really that time of year now where, we always talk about elimination games. There's any given week, there's going to be some elimination games, and you're going to start seeing that pool of teams that could make the playoffs dwindle down, some of the cream rising to the top, and some of these undefeated teams kind of their ride ending. But it will be interesting. Unfortunately for the ACC, it's kind of like a conference of somewhat mediocrity this year, but it is a compelling, we know the Big Ten is going to get a handful of teams in. We know the SEC is probably going to get even more of a handful of teams in. We know Notre Dame is, as long as they win out, is going to get in. But that ACC, the fight, if you look at the ACC standings right now and all the teams that are basically have one loss or less in the ACC, the battle to get to that conference championship, it actually seems like Virginia is sort of in the driver's seat to get there. But
how is that team?
Yeah.
How have they not lost some of these games too?
It's crazy. Just to think too, and when we're saying, the ACC is wide open and there are so many teams that can get there. Well, 2 teams that can't get there are Clemson and Florida State, and Miami's on life support. So you're talking like Georgia Tech, Pitt, who's having a great year, and they've found something with this freshman quarterback. Who else? SMU's right there. Virginia, obviously, we talked about. I think there's a few other teams even, but
Duke's still alive too.
Duke's still alive, yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I saw something that says Florida State's playing Clemson this week, and it's on the ACC network. That's how crazy that is. So, yeah, so that'll be just interesting to see which one of those teams can get in. And then BYU is I think almost a double-digit underdog this week against Texas Tech. At what point will this magic run out on their undefeated season? They still have an opportunity to to sneak in some capacity too. So there will definitely be a lot of moving and shaking. And it's crazy that, like, I don't have Texas's schedule in front of me for the rest of the year, but for as bad as they've looked kind of in at times all year, they are sitting there right on the doorstep.
They
So
have
if they can win the rest of their games, they will.
it's they have a couple tough ones though. They're at Georgia. They're off this week at Georgia, home for Arkansas, and then home for number 3 Texas A&M. So
okay. So they got a lot.
Yeah, they got a lot to still to do to get their way in. They got to win out, but I mean they can do it. They can definitely do it. But they're on life support as well to get in.
Yeah, I would say so. Knowing that, because they can't lose a game. So very interesting. It's gonna be. I mean, these brackets are fun to debate, and they build shows around it and talk about it. But we know it'll be just interesting to snapshot what it looks like right now, and then fast forward in 4 weeks what it looks like. And I feel like this year especially, like there will be at least 3 teams that are in right now that probably don't end up getting in, and converse 3 teams that end up emerging in. So it'll just be interesting to see who that will be. But it is sure nice to be on the right side of that right now, and kind of in a position to where if we can take, the very least, if we can take care of business these next 3 weeks, you kind of know you've locked up a berth. But we have a lot more business to take care of than just getting in.
Agreed.
A lot more regular season business to take care of. So
absolutely.
And a potential game with Indiana that could be for the Heisman Trophy on top of the 1 seed, and a lot
That's
of
a great point.
A lot of subplots in these games.
That's a great point. We're going to talk. We got probably about 10 more minutes here. I do want to spend about 30 seconds on Youngstown State, just because they played an unbelievable game this past weekend. However, special teams and turnovers cost them. But they played the equivalent of what Georgia was probably like 3 years ago, what Ohio State is now in North Dakota State. And they took them pretty much to the wire. It was a 35-30 game with about 3 minutes left. North Dakota State goes up by 8 to kick a field goal. And YSU just couldn't end up finishing them off. But they are a very solid team. I think Bo Brungard might be in the Heisman race for FCS. I believe it's called the Walter Payton Award in that. But yeah, they're doing some great stuff there. But wanted to share at least a little bit on the Penguins, because they played a hell of a game, just fall short. But that shows they're right up there with some of the big boys of FCS, and hopefully can get back on that mantle of their rightful place in FCS. And as I said, North Dakota State would be the equivalent to the 36th ranked team in all of college football right now. So that, they'd be better than Clemson. They'd be better than, I think they'd be the 10th or 11th team in the Big Ten, and the 10th or 11th team in the SEC right now, based on what they're doing in their performance. So just a quick shout out to the Penguins there for a great performance. All right, let's take a look at this week's best matchup. So I put the Buckeyes on there. Obviously, that's a game at Purdue, which we should handle. We don't want to take Purdue lightly, but you look at some of the other matchups. You got BYU at Texas Tech, 8 versus 9. Indiana at Penn State. That is not a rollover game. That's not just a roll the ball out on the field. And 2 years ago, we're talking about Indiana at Penn State. Then we're like, oh, that's probably a Penn State like 14 to 21 point win. Now it's like, how much is Indiana going to win this game by? It's like how quickly things have turned.
Did you say that's like a 2 touchdown line?
I think it's 14.5 when I saw it. And that sounds about right to me, because I think Penn State could hang around. I could also see Indiana, like just wanting to make
if Penn State can kind of bring the similar game plan that they brought to Columbus last
Yep.
week. And, knowing that, again, Indiana's offense very explosive. I think Ohio State's is a little bit of a different level with the passing game.
Yeah.
Penn State being at home could hang in that game for a while. Indiana struggled against Iowa in sort of a physical type game. That was really the only struggle they've had all year. So I'm completely with you on that. I will be on Penn State in that game, definitely. I don't know that they will pull the upset, but I think that game might be closer than the experts think it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And another rank versus rank, you got A&M at Missouri. That's, A&M's been in a couple tight ones this year, and Missouri's, played Alabama and a couple other schools right down to the wire. They're a tough out, especially at home. So that will be a really good game, in my opinion. You got Alabama hosting LSU. That's a former matchup of absolute juggernauts in the game. LSU obviously down a little bit this year, but don't sleep on the Tigers coming into Alabama. And
I was just gonna say that could be like a we got rid of Brian Kelly. We can all take a breath, loosen up a little bit, rally around the new coach. And, again, like LSU has underachieved, like Penn State has underachieved, like Texas has underachieved, you name the school. But the talent on LSU's roster is the same that it was at the beginning of the year, just because they've underachieved.
Yep.
So as far as being capable of going into Tuscaloosa and winning, they are. Yep. It just hasn't worked out for them this year. And that's always that game always seems to be a close game. So it's kind of a fun one to watch.
And a couple more, Georgia going into Starksville, Mississippi State with that cowbell. They almost took Texas out there. They took Arizona State out earlier this year. There, and so that should be a good one. And Oregon goes to Iowa. That will be a very interesting. That line is under a touchdown. And Iowa took Indiana right to the wire. They're the only team really to be in a game with Indiana this year. And then, so that stadium is not Kinnick Stadium, I believe, is that's a tough place to play. And so we'll see what Oregon's made of, because I think that's going to be talk about two different type of teams, the way they're built. But I think that's going to be a fun matchup this weekend. I'm really
and I know that I'm guilty. I've shit talked Iowa and Kirk Ferentz a lot, but they have a pretty good football team this year, and they can score a little bit. So, totally with you. I think that is those contrasts and style games are always kind of fun, but it absolutely is a tough place to play.
Absolutely.
And if that line's under a touchdown, that kind of tells you something already too.
Yep. It's in that the Vegas zone there. It's 6.5, then it dropped to 5.5. So Vegas isn't really quite sure, but they kind of like Iowa in that game. And then you got Notre Dame hosting Navy. Notre Dame's got to win out to get in the playoff, and Navy is a good team, but Notre Dame should be able to handle them in that game. But things can kind of get weird in those games too. And then just some of the games around the 3-3-0. YSU hosts Southern Illinois. Kent State tomorrow night at Ball State. Akron was beaten up on UMass tonight in some action. And then Mount Union is at Marietta. Mount Union keeps rolling. So those are some of the games around Northeast Ohio this weekend. All right, let's go. We're going to wrap up here in a little bit. We just want to talk about our opponent coming up this weekend, led by head coach Barry Odom. Purdue is 2-7, 0-6 in the Big Ten. Started off the season pretty solid, but their last win was against the team Youngstown State's playing this weekend. So we'll see how the Penguins do against them. But pretty brutal schedule to finish the year. Michigan last week, and they gave Michigan a hell of a game. Only a 5-point loss in that game, but they play the Buckeyes this week. They're at Washington, who's the number 24 team in the country, and then they're home for Indiana. So Purdue and Wisconsin, two of the most brutal schedules in the country. So that right now on their ledger, they have 6 ranked opponents. So pretty brutal schedule for Purdue. So that's a look at their schedule. Here's a look at the series overall. Buckeyes right now 29.5-point favorite, 48.5-point total, but series dates back to 1919. Buckeyes are 42-15-2. Last year, Ohio State won 45-0, and the Buckeyes have won 7 of the last 10, and including the last 3. But they are 9-5 in their last 14 games at Purdue. So Purdue has given the Buckeyes trouble, and all 5 of those losses are since 2000. So that is not. You and I saw a game there, and I think Ohio State won 56-0. But we have also watched some games that have been eerily close or just weird games. The Holy Buckeye game was there, stuff like that. There's been some weird games at Purdue. So I'm not putting Ohio State on upset alert by any means, but go in there, handle your business, and get out with no worries in the second half.
Yeah, unfortunately for Purdue, Drew Brees and or Rondale Moore are probably not going to be running out of that locker room, but they really did, props to them. They played a phenomenal game in the Big House at night.
They did.
Gave Michigan everything they had. Some of that was Michigan not playing well, but I think it's cliche to say they're not as bad as their record shows, but they're not as bad as their record shows, and it's still a game we gotta show up for. We know we're gonna get whatever best shot they have. We're gonna get it, and initially that 29.5-point line looked a little high, but we've managed to cover everything we've come across now, and it kind of gets it's the same thing that we kind of, when you're breaking these games down, it's just like, how many points can they realistically score against this defense, and then how well are they going to be able to slow down what we're trying to do on offense? And
right.
The answer always seems to get you to when you break it down, it's like, yeah, this feels like a 4-ish touchdown game, and it's probably going to end up somewhere in the 24 to 35 or 38 point, ultimate difference. And that's why they set the line where they do.
Yep. Absolutely. So let's close out here. Let's go with a score prediction. And I don't know if you have one holstered up or not, but let me know if you want to go first or second here.
You can lead off on this one.
All right. So I think this is going to be a little bit more of a higher scoring game, or cover the over. I have the Buckeyes winning 49-3 in this game. Okay. So I'm going over. I'm going 52 over, and Buckeyes easily covering. Last week, I was 1 point off from the total score. I had 38-13 in a 38-14 game, but I'm going 49-3 Buckeyes this week.
Well, I hope you're right. That would be a hell of a good score. I'm going same point total, but a little bit of a closer game. I'm going 42-10 Ohio State. So we're both covering, and we're both on the over. So you think the Buckeyes are going to go over the total themselves, which
I do. Yeah. I think I have not looked at the weather or anything like that, but I feel pretty confident in this team. And another part that factors into me is if they're putting Heisman campaigns out there for Julian Sayin. Now that's not that's not the offensive coordinator, or that's not Brian Hartline or Ryan Day putting out the Heisman thing, but that's got to be part of it in the back of their mind, and know they're tuning up for Michigan. And this defense is going to get after it continually as well. So, I think they're going to try to put up as many points, still be respectful as well. But I think they're going to get a very comfortable lead and probably break one or two long ones as well. So,
Purdue could be also, an opportunity here in the next couple of weeks too to mix in really trying to get the running game right as well. So
yes, that's a good point.
And I don't know, does Purdue still have that? Purdue always feels like Northwestern used to be that way too, and Notre Dame before they got the artificial turf. But they always, it always feels like Purdue's grass is like a half-inch higher than like any other,
Yeah.
which I think everybody talks about like a slow track. I don't think it really matters because if you're fast,
If you're fast, you're fast.
Slower people are going to be slower than normal on the slower track. Yeah, if you're fast, you're
Right.
fast. But it always feels like you're kind of running in mud on that field. But I don't know if they've gone to an artificial turf or not. But it's more just
I think they still have grass. But
yeah.
I don't know, but I look at some of these numbers they've put up. They put up 27 against Illinois. They put up 30 against Notre Dame, 17 against USC. They put 16 up against Michigan, 24 against Rutgers. So this is a team that can score a little bit, but they also haven't faced a defense like this one they're going to see either. But they also give up a lot of points too. So if Notre Dame scoring 56 and Illinois scoring 43, I'm pretty sure the Buckeyes can do the same. So I think we both like Ohio State to cover and the over in this game. So we feel pretty confident about that, and we'll close out there as it's approaching midnight, and we've done our due diligence tonight, I think. So we're going to close it out there for this show this week. But again, go Buckeyes. It should be, there's not a great slate of college games, but that always means something weird's going to happen in some of the, hopefully it's in the ACC and Big 12 and SEC for sure. So hopefully there's some weirdness. And then, we mentioned Indiana, Penn State, Penn State and Oregon, Iowa could be interesting games. So keep an eye on those two in the Big 10 and we'll see where we go from here. So, and Temple of Brutus likes 52-6. So he's on the over as well and the cover. So 3 for 3. Some people might say fade the public, but we're not the public. We're more experts on this team than the regular general public. All right. So for Greg, I'm Justin. Everybody have a great rest of your week. Go Bucks, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube